It was a Tuesday, and already I was in a game of hide and seek for my life. The mop cupboard was dark, dank, and littered with cobwebs. But even as a spider began crawling over my forehead and into my hair, I had to keep my mouth shut. Hi everyone, I'm Ben, and today I'll tell you how I ended up having 2 girlfriends. Remember to post your unique title ideas in the comments below. Give a like to the ones you want to see animated. If your suggestion does well, we'll include you in our special Discord server. Alright, back to the story. I could hear Billy and his friends rummaging around in the room. They'd been after me since first period. Only in the years that they've been my bullies, I've learned to dodge them. I've learned their patterns, and I knew they were never gonna look in the cupboard. Especially since there was a stupid rumor that Mrs. Reggiani kept her husband's skeletons in there. The problem was, nobody ever did open that cupboard, and the dust in there was 2 inches thick, and I have allergic rhinitis. Just my luck. I was successful the first time the sneeze came about. For a second, the boys outside froze, seemingly listening to something. But when I stopped myself, they went right back to rummaging and proceeded to look into the classroom vents. Why would he be in the vents? He's not that smart, Ollie. Just check in the cupboard like I told you. I don't want to open that thing. Mrs. Reggiana's husband's in there. Her husband doesn't live there. It's his skeleton, you dummy. Why are you scared of a skeleton for? Well, you open it then, if you're so brave. Don't you talk back to me, if you don't want to join that brat in his punishment. But, now that I think about it, people say Mrs. Reggiana's a witch. If we disturb her husband's skeleton, we might get cursed. Whatever. We'll get him at lunch. Clear out, boys. I was finally able to breathe out. Finally. I was so late for second period, I needed to hurry. But then, it happened. The cupboard door was flung open before I could even try to hold it shut. Billy, Ollie, and Denny's faces greeted me with the crazed grins, all fear of skeleton rumors gone from their minds. They had their prey, and they were going to feast. The boys dragged me into the quarters. People ran out of their classrooms to see what was going on. In my school, when someone gets bullied, people come out to watch. And laugh. If I was a paid comedian, I'd be rich. It happened almost every day. And today was no different. The kids took out their phones, and Billy and I began our performance. You know what to do. I told you to give me your lunch money and you ran away from me. You never learn. Now kneel! I stood my ground. Very shakily. I was trembling in the knees, and when people saw, they laughed even harder. I said kneel! I knelt, and Ollie and Denny roared with evil laughter. Say, I'm sorry, master. And you better mean it, you rotten piece of no-life, no-girlfriend scum! I'm sorry, master. That wasn't so hard, was it? Now, give me your lunch money and kiss my shoe. I did it, in front of everyone, as they all filmed and took photos. I just wanted it to be over with. Let them have what they want, and I could finally get to second period. That's my daily life in school. It's pathetic. I know. I chalk it up to my rotten luck. Everyone does. Some people pity me. Most just make fun of me when I meet some sort of misfortune. It all started on our first day of school. And as I was trying to cross the street, a car came out of nowhere, sped through the puddle in front of me, and drenched me in muddy water. I was already late, so I had to spend the entire first period dripping muddy water all over the classroom. After my mom dropped off a change of clothes for me, I walked into an open locker door and gave myself a bruised eye. And at lunch, a bird flew into the cafeteria, pooped straight onto my hair, and immediately died, landing on top of my food. From that day forward, people call me Bad Luck Ben. And with my luck, The nickname stuck. Nobody wanted to be friends with me. No girl wanted to be around me. I mean, who'd want to be friends with the unlucky charm? Who would want to date someone who would only bring bad luck? That made me easy pickings for the bullies. And since then, Billy and his friends made my life a 24/7 cycle of a nightmare. But it all changed one day. The day the O'Connor girls came to town. They were twins who came to our school as foreign exchange students. Maeve and Orla were like princesses from some magical elf kingdom. They were tall, beautiful, and had hair that looked like waterfalls of fire. The kids at my school usually made fun of redheads. They stopped doing that when they saw how hot Maeve and Orla were. Every boy wanted to date them. Every girl wanted to be them. There were even some girls who wanted to date them too. If the O'Connor twins pass you in the hallway, you just stop. It's like seeing a rainbow. Like a really good surprise on your birthday. My luck began to turn the day the twins chose to sit next to me. Orla sat on my right, and Maeve on my left. I felt like the filling in a red velvet cake, and they smelled so nice. Suddenly, I saw a hand waving at my face. Hello? Anyone there? What's your name, awkward boy? Oh, sorry, I'm Ben. They'd been trying to get my attention for a whole minute, but I was so distracted about thinking about what to say to them that I didn't even notice they were already talking to me. Maeve shook my hand and Orla did the same. Nice to meet you, Ben. Absolute pleasure. The pleasure's mine. And it really was. Maeve and Orla hung out with me a lot. I was their first friend, and through my eyes, they began to see the difference in our schools compared to theirs. But nobody liked that at all, especially Billy and his friends. Instead of asking for my help and introducing them to my new friends, they picked on me even harder. They would chase me as soon as I got in through the school gates, and they'd put frogs in my bag. One day, they cornered me in the boys' bathroom and dragged me to the quad where everyone was. They were about to make me kiss their shoes in when Orla and Maeve jumped in to defend me. What's happening here? What are you doing to Benny? Benny needs to be punished. What did he do? I felt it was the only chance I had to speak out. So I did. They're picking on me because they hate that I spend so much time with you. He wants to ask you out on a date. What happened next was something even I couldn't dream up. Maeve and Orla laughed. They clutched their bellies and full-on laughed at Billy. Us? Go out with you? You're joking, right? Oh, honey, I wouldn't go out with you. Neither will Orla. You're just... Well, look at you. You're so short and ugly. Like a little troll. And what's worse is that you have a horrible attitude. We're not into bullies, you see. Besides, we're already seeing someone. Billy was so stunned at the insults hurled at him, he couldn't even speak. He just stuttered. But something the girls said made me blurt out. You're seeing someone? Orla laughed. You silly! Everyone got that on video, and everyone heard it. But my brain was so fuzzy I had to ask again. We mean it. You are the absolute sweetest. And cute as well. Who knows, maybe we'll decide to just move here for good. And, you know, we've been trying to ask you out for weeks and you just won't get the hint. Well, I guess I know now. Maeve and Orla took me out on a date. We went to the movies, found ourselves having burgers and milkshakes at the local diner, and ended up talking for hours outside said diner, even after it closed. The next morning, we all went to school at the same time, holding hands as everyone stared. It felt so good that I found two people who understood me and liked me for who I was. And seeing everyone be jealous of Bad Luck Ben, for once, was just the icing on the cake. People laid off me after that. Nobody could believe that the O'Connor twins were dating me, and none of them was as surprised as I was. Even my luck seemed to have backed off because everything that happened in my life was somehow just good. No more bad luck. No more people making fun of me. And 2 girlfriends? It felt like the universe finally ran out of things to throw at me. And now, I was just reaping the rewards. Billy, Denny, and Ollie lost their authority after my girlfriends made fun of them in public. That video is still being shared to this day. The funny thing is, those 3 still keep trying to ask me for Orla and Maeve's numbers. I told them to get as far away from my girls as possible, or they were gonna get punished.
I felt the snowball collide with my face as I tried to struggle from the ropes about my wrists. The guys were taunting me, mocking me. They shouted insults I'd heard 1,000 times from them. Trailer trash, welfare kid, gutter rat. Those words used to sting, but now they were just a part of my morning routine before class. The bell rang and the guys ran off. Finally, I was able to wriggle free and make my way to the school building. But as soon as I got there, the principal, who had been watching the whole thing, stopped me. "You're not going into my school dripping wet, Mr. Scott." And so once again, I was late. Hi, my name's Vincent, but people just call me Vince. Remember to post your unique title ideas in the comments below. Give a like to the ones you want to see animated. If your suggestion does well, we'll include you in our special Discord server. Alright, back to the story. I go to a school where the rich and famous send their kids. My family is neither of those things. I only really got in because I won a scholarship grant. Do I wish I never applied? Every single day of my life. Life at St. Cuthbert's was hell. I didn't fit in. I was always looked down on. The kids hated me for always having better grades than them, and the teachers hated me for just existing. In their opinion, someone like me should have never even been allowed to be a student there. To them, I was some sort of smudge on the perfect, manicured, expertly curated face of the school. I had one friend, and that was the owner of the school. So unfortunately for all my haters, no matter how hard they tried, none of them could get rid of me. Otherwise, they'd have to justify it to Mr. Gollenberger. It was a weird friendship I had with Mr. Gollenberger. He was the one who chose me to win the scholarship. He picked me from thousands of kids who applied, and ever since then, we kinda became close. On occasion, when he'd come out of his office, we'd hang out and talk about all the things we liked. And it turned out, I had the same interests as a middle-aged man. Another thing that bonded the owner of the school and I was the fact that we lived the same life. Back when he was young, Steve, as he keeps trying to make me call him, was just as poor as I was. But one day, a man whose windshield he was cleaning took him in and gave him a better life. I chose you because you remind me of myself. I chose you because I'm paying it forward. What that man did for me, I want to do for you. That's what he always tells me. I'm deeply grateful to him. And even though life at St. Cuthbert's was hell, it's my appreciation for what Steve has done for me that has kept me going. And it's also why I never tell him the bad things that happened to me there. But it's when Steve would go on extended business trips that my tormentors would really have their field day. With him gone, they felt more bold and would do the best they could to get me to drop out. My teachers would pick on every little thing I did. They would find a reason to punish me and put me in detention. Meanwhile, my classmates would steal my books, throw away my shoes, or superglue me to chairs. They would just collectively make every waking moment of my school days a nightmare. But I hung in there, because I knew, one day, I would be out of there for good. I just had to stick it out. One particularly difficult day, someone who smelt of lavender walked into the room. She looked at me and smiled, and the teacher introduced her as a new transfer student. All the guys immediately pushed whoever was sitting next to them and offered their seat to her. But the girl kept smiling at me as she walked towards the seat next to mine. Ahem, Ginny, are you quite sure you want to sit there? I suggest you take the seat in front next to Mr. Hundleby. He'd make a fantastic seatmate. I totally would. No, thank you, Miss Holden. I'd rather sit here. I assure you, you won't have a pleasant time. Vincent Scott is a lowlife. He reeks of desperation and poverty. You don't want any of that rubbing off on you. Ginny just smiled sweetly at Miss Holden and then at me. And as if to mock everyone else who was telling her what to do, she happily plopped herself next to me and shook my hand. Ginny, nice to meet you. The pleasure's all mine. I saw Ginny's cheeks turn pink, and it made my heartbeat go a bit faster. I smiled to myself. Ginny and I became fast friends. It helped a lot that we liked the same weird things. Every guy in the school hated me for it, though. They all wanted to date Ginny, and yet somehow, Ginny only wanted to spend time with me. One day, the guys from the polo club cornered me into the cafeteria. I was headed to Ginny's table and they cut me off. Where are you going, Wealthy? Yeah, where are you going? Just let me eat my lunch in peace, guys. We decide how you eat your lunch, loser. And I think today, you're eating it off the floor. Like the cockroach that you are. Oops, my bad. Trevor took the tray of food and flipped it over, dumping all of my lunch onto my shoes. Seeing all that, Ginny stood up and came to my defense. She slapped Trevor, and when she did, the whole cafeteria, which was previously laughing at my misfortune, suddenly went ghostly silent. Nobody had ever laid a hand on Trevor. His dad was a senator. Trevor huffed and puffed, and then he pushed Ginny until she fell over. Who do you think you are? How dare you touch me, you nobody? Do you know who my dad is? When Trevor pulled at Ginny's hair, I knew I couldn't just let it go. I had to do what I had to do. Trevor and his friends all sported black eyes after that lunch, and I was sent to Steve's office. He flew down from a very important conference after receiving multiple calls from the parents, and he was very disappointed when he spoke to me. Ginny was there to defend me, but I guess the decision was already made. I'm sorry, my boy, but my hands are tied. You could have spoken to me about this and I could have done something. But violence. You know my one rule in this school. Violence is never the answer. I have to expel you, dear boy. I wish I didn't have to. You know how much I believe in you. But hitting those kids? I can't simply let you off. The parents would say I'm showing favoritism. If it was Trevor's father alone, I could have handled it. But these are all people of influence, and they could ruin this school. I understand, sir. I'm sorry. Not as sorry as I am, son. Suddenly, Ginny burst into the conversation. But Dad, he was just defending me. Dad? As if neither of them heard me, they continued. Be that as it may, all the witnesses are unwilling to say that. Even the teachers who were there will not stop repeating that it was Vince who started it. But you know it's not true. He's your dad? And again, they continued as if they hadn't registered my shock. I know it's not true, but hundreds of pupils and 9 teachers saying otherwise puts me in an impossible situation, sweetheart. Ginny stomped out of there, kicking a vase over on the way out. I shared a hug with my first friend at that school, and apologized to him again for causing all that trouble. I could swear I saw his eyes well up, but what he said to me as he said goodbye will stick with me forever. People who have everything will always hate those who have nothing and yet still are happier. Never let them bring you down. And one day, you will be the one laughing. It turned out, Steve was right. Just before graduation, Ginny came to find me at my job at the gas station. She gave me an envelope, and when I opened it, I tried to immediately give it back. But Ginny insisted I use it to show everyone they shouldn't have messed with me. I was still reeling from the fact that my best friend turned out to be Steve's daughter, and now my world was turned upside down again when she handed me a check for $20 million. I knew Steve was a billionaire, but still, this much money? I knew exactly what to do with it. I gave some to my parents, and the rest I used to show Trevor and his buddies why they should never mess with me. I started my own corporation, a group of different businesses. In every location of each business that Trevor and his friends' families owned, I put up stores of my own, right next to theirs. Stores that were directly in competition with whatever business they owned. I made my prices significantly lower than theirs, and within weeks, those businesses tanked. I kept buying businesses to compete with their families' businesses. I made friends with all the financial brokers and bankers in our area, and with those connections, I convinced the banks not to lend those families any money to save their businesses. And soon enough, all their businesses went bust, and Trevor's friends went bankrupt. As for Trevor's dad, I had him followed. I had an investigator dig up some dirt, and it turned out Mr. Senator had been embezzling money for decades. In one fell swoop, I leaked the papers and Trevor's dad was impeached. His family was in disgrace and nobody wanted to help them. Even after all that, I still had lots of money to spare. So I started my own foundation, an institution dedicated to helping kids like me. It was my turn to pay it forward. And this time, I was going to make sure unfortunate but talented kids would have the same opportunities as those kids who come from money. Steve and I work closely nowadays. St. Cuthbert's recently passed a bylaw that prohibits any kind of discrimination amongst its students. His school is one of my biggest partners. This year, St. Cuthbert's will have 58 scholars from my foundation. Oh, and by the way, Ginny and I realized we were soulmates. We got married after she graduated.
I ran across the street, narrowly dodging a speeding car that zoomed past. I just couldn't believe it. My girlfriend was on the TV! I didn't even know she had something like this going on! I was just walking home from spending all day revising my novel when I heard her familiar voice. I thought for sure she was at work, but when I saw her face on the screens that lined a used TV shop, I stopped in my tracks and bolted towards it. I must have looked like a psycho. My hands and face glued to the glass window, staring intently at how pretty she looked on screen. It looked like she was being interviewed for something. And then, she reached behind her and took out a book. And everything I knew, everything I loved in the world, just died in front of me. Hi, I'm Simon, and this is how I got back on the girl who stole my novel. Do you think you have an idea for a great story? Post the title in the comments below, and give a like to the ones you want to see animated. Now, let's get back into it. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always dreamed of being a writer. But my parents wanted me to be a doctor. They said there was no money in writing. Even my friends weren't so optimistic when I told them I was gonna finally go after my dreams after years of being a surgeon. And just a little bit, I think they were right. At the start, at least. I had a hard time writing. Most of the time, I'd just sit in front of my computer staring at a blank screen. Sometimes my brain goes too fast that my fingers can barely keep up. And through it all, I was broke. I had carved a significant chunk of my savings by just focusing on being a writer. I still believed I can do it, though. I believed as soon as I finished my work, I could sell it. And then, it will all be worth it. Unfortunately, I think I'm the only one who believes in my dream. I've dated and lost so many girls who left me as soon as they realized that I was a struggling artist. It was pretty lonely for a while. Until I met Anna. Anna was a breath of fresh air. She was a dreamer just like me, and she was the only one who actually motivated me to go after my dream. She was my taskmaster. Every morning she'd wake me up with a steaming cup of coffee with a sweet, motivational phrase on a sticky note. She would plant a kiss on my forehead and remind me, one day, I'll be the wife of a really famous writer. And so, I worked really hard for her. I would plot out my book during the day, and at nights, when my brain goes online, I would write until my fingers ached. But it was all worth it. It was all for Anna. She was pushing me towards my dreams, so I wanted to make hers come true. She wanted a good, comfortable life, and I swore I was gonna give it to her. Anna was the first to hear about any ideas that brew in my head. She was my critic, my muse, and my editor in one. I would tell her what I planned to do with the story, and she would tell me whether it works or not. The best feeling for me is when I tell her a twist that happens, and her eyes grow wide out of surprise and excitement for what happens next. And after 6 months of never going out of the house and having no real job, I finally did it. I finished the most important thing I have ever done. It felt like my very own baby. And when I handed it to Anna, I had a surge of jumbled feelings. There was a pit in my stomach, but at the same time, I was brimming with joy. But then I also felt sad because the story was over, and and I missed the characters I wrote on the page. And now, I was giving my baby away for it to be judged. Anna loved it. She loved it so much she squealed and jumped around yelling how I was gonna be a millionaire. I never knew that trusting Hannah with my manuscript was the worst thing I could have ever done. As soon as I saw her bring up that book during the interview, I knew what she had done. It was no wonder she'd been coming home very late a lot, and she was off on some meetings all the time. She'd been having publisher meetings, and now she'd succeeded. The book had sold and is in print. Except for the biggest, most glaring difference. Her name was where mine should have been. That scheming, thieving piece of trash sold my work as her own. And beside her on that interview was a man I looked up to my whole life. I idolized Mark ever since I was a kid. And now, he was holding my girlfriend's hands and kissing her on national TV, telling everyone he was my stolen book's editor. I was so mad I punched that glass window and shattered it. So, yeah. Now I'd been swindled out of my life's work, lost my girlfriend to my idol, and had a bill for a shop window I can't afford. On top of all that, I was flat broke. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't even afford a lawyer, so I did the one thing I could. I wrote. I wrote about everything that happened. I took up a day job waiting tables, and I used every bit of time I wasn't waiting tables and devoted it to finishing my new work. It went faster this time, and I had a fire under me that made me do things I thought was impossible. In just 2 months, I finished my first draft, and I immediately went to work sending copies of it to every publisher in town. I received rejection after rejection after rejection letter. I hit rock bottom. I was out of time. And out of money. While Anna was enjoying her best life, flying from city to city promoting the book she stole and making millions off of it, I was down in the dumps, poor, and feeling like an utter failure. Until one morning, I woke up with determination out of nowhere. I told myself she deserved to be exposed, and so, in a last-ditch effort, I sent my book to Netflix. And let me tell you, I still remember the exact moment I received the email that changed my life. I was at work, holding a tray of drinks on my way to table 42. I glanced at my email, but when I saw it was from Netflix, I rushed to open it. Before I could even read it, a call came, and there was no amount of professionalism in the world that would have made me contain the insane happiness I felt at that very moment. In shock, I dropped the tray and jumped and celebrated as if I just scored the winning goal. They're doing a show about my book! Netflix is doing a show about my book! My manager came over with a sinister look on his face. That's nice, but do you mind not shouting at my restaurant? Keep your personal matters to yourself. You're causing a scene. Clean this mess up right now or you're fired! Well, up yours, Steve! I quit! Oh, and by the way, Steve, I know you've been stealing from the cash register. And that you're taking all our tips. I'll make sure to mention that to the owner during my exit interview. You're not getting one! I don't care. Catch me on Netflix, if you can afford a subscription. I walked out of the place a free man. Netflix went on production pretty quickly. They told me they were eager to ride the wave of Anna's stolen book, so they released the show just as her book reached the top 10 bestsellers list. In one night, my entire life changed. Everyone recognized me on the street. My story was the talk of the town. Everyone was talking about the character in it that was so eerily familiar and similar to Anna. They hated all the betrayal that befell my character after years of working on his book. See, my story never mentioned her, but I made sure to put it in every detail that would make people think it was her. In that story, everything that happened to me in real life was mirrored on the screen. I asked Netflix to do something special for me. I requested that they only release the finale on a very specific day, Anna's birthday. When the final episode of the show dropped, the world went wild. The very last 10 seconds of the show featured an after-credits scene, and in it was a photo of Anna and me during happier days, before she betrayed me. Tweets rolled in. News articles began popping up. TikToks of people shook about the revelation. Facebook posts, Instagram stories, even YouTube videos. Everyone was talking about Anna, and how she brazenly stole my work and sold it as her own. I can only imagine she was hiding away somewhere, spending her birthday in shame. Finally, I had my vindication. But that was only the beginning. With Netflix money coming in, I was finally able to get myself an amazing lawyer. I went after her new boyfriend, and her publisher. It was intellectual theft of the highest order, and I planned on bankrupting them to their very last penny. Our trial was publicized as if it was some sort of Kardashian scandal. Every news outlet was there, and when the sentence was being read out, Anna, in a desperate move, tried to run. She weaved and dodged the officers in court like an eel. She managed to squeeze past them, and she ran for the doors. But she wasn't quick enough for me. I stuck my foot out just a little, and she tripped and rolled, splaying onto the floor in front of all of the cameras. I've got to say, even after millions of dollars being awarded to me by the court, the most satisfying outcome of that trial was seeing Anna's stupid face on every headline as she fell onto the courtroom floor, her hair wildly flailing behind her and her eyes wide and crazy. She's still a meme to this day, and I've never been prouder of anything.
No! No, don't take my precious paintings away from me! My jewelry! David, do something! What do you want me to do? Anything! You useless man! You're taking away all my stuff! I tried to block the men. I pleaded with them. I offered to even bribe them. But they were blind and deaf to my pleas. In a desperate attempt, I grabbed the Picasso that Annie had asked me to get her for her first anniversary. But the federal agent simply grabbed the painting, twisted my arm, and had me kneeling on the floor in 3 swift and effortless motions. That was a day we lost everything. Hi there, I'm David, and this is a story of how I married 3 princesses. If you've got a unique title idea, post them in the comments below. Give a like to the ones you want to see animated. If your suggestion does well, we'll include you in our special Discord server. Now, back to the story. When Annie and I got married, I never thought I'd be involved in a major financial scandal. But my wife was high maintenance with exquisite taste. And with that exquisite taste came a hefty price tag. It was probably my fault too. I know it was unwise to share privileged information with anyone, not even my own wife. But ever since she'd gotten me to talk about work, I'd been unknowingly feeding her information about the stock market. And good old Annie, who just wanted to make money quick so she could hide all her spending from me, dabbled in insider trading. Using my name. She was caught, of course, and I was slapped with a massive fine. It was only really because of the mercy of the judge that I wasn't sent straight into prison. But when I couldn't afford the fine, they took everything from me. But mostly from Annie, because most of the expensive things in my house were things she had me buy for her. By the end of it all, Annie and I were living in a massive house with nothing in it. They gave us 2 weeks to vacate the property because they were taking the house too. I will not live in a 2-bedroom apartment in some nondescript town, David. I will not have it. You know I deserve way more than that. I deserve the finer things. It's all we can afford, sweetheart. It's all you can afford. That was when Annie put a bag over my head. She dragged me down the stairs and pushed me into the boot of her car. She must have driven for an hour. I tried to struggle free, but someone had helped Annie tie me up, and whoever it was knew his way around ropes. When they took off the bag, I saw that it was Sven, the old captain of our yacht. It made sense, actually. Ever since we hired Sven, Annie had been wanting to go on boat trips more and more. Where are you taking me? Let me go! Fat chance, sweetheart. If you can't make more money for me, then I'll make money off of you. I was thrusted into an elevator that must have gone at least 7 stories down. And when we walked out of it, we were greeted by a guy in a mask. He never spoke. He just made us follow him. And after walking down a winding staircase, he pushed me into a completely dark room. I don't know how long I was there. Only that there were definitely other people in there with me, and none of us could see, or knew what was happening. Suddenly, A door opened and a bright spotlight shone into the room. I realized we were all guys in there. All clueless guys dragged into this. This thing, whatever it was. I soon found out that what we were dragged into was an underground auction, and we were all being sold to the highest bidder. The people in masks pushed me out into the light and onto a podium. There was no one in the audience, just a bunch of cameras pointed straight at me. And behind those cameras, in the safety of their homes, were the bidders. Immediately, several of the cameras turned green. I figured those were the people bidding on me. I was scared, of course, but somewhat a little flattered. I never knew I would fetch such a price. The bidding war felt like it was going to go forever, but when the price shot up to $400,000, 4 bidders gave up. At $550,000, 2 more gave in. Until there were only 2 cameras that had green lights on them. 635 bid the camera to my right. 700 counted the one to my left. And on the 2 cameras went. Until, after what seemed like ages, the camera to my right made an impossible bid of $1 million. It felt so exhilarating. And then I suddenly remembered. I was the one being bought. And that filled me with fear. What were they going to do to me? Help! I screamed in my head. And then I screamed out for real. Help! Please! Please no, I'll do anything. Help me! Don't let them take me away. Help! Annie! And just then, Annie appeared from one of the rooms holding a phone in her hand. Oh, don't struggle so much, David. Now we get to make more money off you. See, he would have only fetched half as much if we hadn't been here to drive up the price. And then, she pointed at one of the cameras. And it hit me. They drove up the price by posing as auction goers. It was so smart, I would have admired her for it if I wasn't too busy getting shipped off to whoever had bought me. They must have knocked me out because when I woke up, I was in a bed. The most comfortable bed I had ever slept in. And when I looked up, there were angels painted on the ceiling. There was gold everywhere. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. In fact, that was the first question I asked the maid who came to help me out of bed. But she just laughed at me and told me to wear the clothes that were laid out for me. When they escorted me to a room that was probably the size of an average house, my jaw dropped. I'd seen that room before, in movies. And the woman sitting on the throne at the very end of the room was the queen. I bowed as low as I could bow, and I walked towards her, knees shaking, until I saw the 3 women in beautiful dresses who were sitting below her throne. They were so beautiful, I actually tripped on my way to kissing the queen's hand. Your Highness, such an honor. You understand we need secrecy in this situation, yes? Of course, Your Highness. No one must know I'm involved in such activities. It was a silly impulse. My daughter's idea, in fact. Many billionaires have invited me to take part in the auction for many years, but I've always declined. But when my daughters saw you as one of the men for sale, they simply couldn't resist. It was their idea that we buy you. And so, here you are. Here I am. Yes, and well, my daughters are ever so impulsive, and they're of the mind that they desire to marry you. Marry me? Yes, and that will be the end of that. 3 months came and went like a daydream, and the wedding of the century happened. It was the first time something like it had ever happened. 3 princesses marrying one guy, all on the same day and the same ceremony. So many guys would come up to me on the street and say how lucky I was. They would say they wished they were me. And I knew why. I was incredibly lucky. Annie could have sold me to some syndicate or criminal, or some sick people. Instead, she unknowingly gave me the best life possible. I was living in a palace with 3 beautiful, hot princesses who were in love with me. And now, I'm the son-in-law of the queen. I could have whatever I wanted. I could do whatever I wanted. And I could wish for anything and it would be granted. It's like winning the lottery or finding a genie with unlimited wishes. It was all over the news, of course. No man had ever had 3 princesses married to him in history, so all the news channels and magazines wanted me. Naturally, Annie heard of all of it. Who wouldn't? I was practically a household name. She tried getting back to my good graces, but she divorced me. She told me I was worthless, and she sold me. Funny how the guy she said was worthless fetched $1 million price tag and now was a prince. It was during one award ceremony's after party that I saw her again. I tried to avoid ever being anywhere near my ex-wife, but that night, I saw her partying with Sven. I was surprised they could even afford to go to that club, since I heard Annie had driven them almost bankrupt with all the shopping she'd been doing. Annie kept trying to catch my eye, but I kept pretending like she wasn't there. When she finally felt the need to come introduce herself to my wives, I clicked my fingers and bodyguards took her away. But not before I thought to rub it in her face that selling me off was a huge mistake on her part and a massive gain for me. "What are you doing? Let me go! I know the prince! Tell them, David! Tell them I was your wife!" "I'm sorry, miss, but you must be mistaken. I have no idea who you are." I kissed my princesses right in front of her. The paparazzi took photos like crazy. The picture was on every front page the morning after. And there, behind me and my wives, Annie was photographed making the funniest, most satisfyingly jealous face ever. "Help! Donna, please! Don't do this! Help! Anyone!" I banged my fists against the metal gates of the factory, but Donna only laughed and started walking away. "Why are you doing this? Why, Donna? Please don't leave me here!" Donna stopped in her tracks. I heard her turn around and walk slowly back towards me. For a second, I felt relief wash over me. And then, Donna laughed an evil, maniacal laugh. "By the time they find you, the world will have already forgotten who you are." Chills ran down my spine. Was this it? Was this how I die? Hi there, I'm Callum, and my crush turned out to be a psycho. This is the story of how she kidnapped me. Do you have a unique title idea? Post them in the comments below, and give a like to the ones you want to see animated. Now, back to the story. When I was 6, I saw the most beautiful girl in the world. My sister brought Donna home for the first time so they could read magazines together. And I knew in my heart I was in love. Sure, she was 2 years above me, but I was an ambitious kid. I've been in love with her ever since. Every time Donna and my sister would hang out at her room, I'd make up some sort of excuse to knock on her door. I even asked Mom to ask my sister if I could hang with them sometimes. I did it so much that Kira eventually started locking her door so I couldn't bother them. Donna knew I had my eyes on her. It was pretty obvious. Sometimes she'd give me a kiss on the forehead, but it kind of felt a little annoying, 'cause she just saw my crush on her as something cute, something childish. She had no idea I was going to carry that love with me all the way to high school. Puberty hit me like a ton of bricks. In only a few years, I was taller than everyone in my class. I joined the basketball team, and that was how I met my best buddy in the whole world. To be completely honest, I only tried out because I wanted to see the cheerleaders. Donna was the cheer captain, and of course, I was going to do whatever it takes to get her attention. But when I started playing for the school, I met Jax. Jax was funny, popular, and everyone's best friend. He was so charismatic, even the teachers are helpless against his charm. Jax was like an older bro to me. He taught me a lot of stuff, and he introduced me to gaming, and he even taught me how to drive. He motivated me whenever I was feeling down, and thanks to him, I took being in the basketball team more seriously than I first intended. Everybody loved Jax. There wasn't a person in that school he hasn't helped. So, it didn't surprise me when I found out that the love of my life was hoping that Jax would ask her to prom. Yeah, just my luck. Of all the girls in the universe, Donna had to be the one to have a crush on my best friend. I kept quiet about it, but when Jax heard about the rumor that Donna was waiting for him to ask her out, Jax just took me aside and put his hand on my shoulder. "You know I'd never do that to you, right?" "What? Huh?" "Do what?" "Oh, don't pretend like you don't know what I'm talking about." "But how'd you know?" He laughed. "I've never seen anyone stare at a girl so hopelessly. Every time Donna's in her room, you look like a sad puppy." "Is it that obvious?" "Yeah, you're not doing yourself any favors. But hey, don't worry. Bros before, don't call her that." Alright. All I'm saying is that I'm gonna let her down easy. Make sure you swoop in there before anyone else. Jax was the best. Any guy would jump at the chance to date Donna. Rich, hot, beautiful, and popular? I doubt anyone would ever pass on that chance. But Jax did it for me. News spread that Donna got rejected, and that she was pretty upset about it. I wore my nicest shirt and bought a dozen roses. But when I came up to her after school, she shrieked at me and started throwing her books at my head. "You! It's because of you! He rejected me because of you!" Donna grabbed the flowers I bought for her, and threw them on the ground. And then she stomped on them, her face full of tears, but she was full of hatred. For me. Do you have any idea how much you've humiliated me? Now everyone in school is talking about how Jax dumped me because some stupid kid has a crush on me? Everyone's making fun of me, Callum. Can you just leave me alone? You're a loser. You're my best friend's younger brother. I will never ever go out with you. I went home that night, humiliated and depressed. Even my sister, who wasn't usually on my side, came to check up on me. The next morning, something happened that I didn't expect. Donna tapped me on my shoulder, and I was so surprised to see her. I jumped in shock. Maybe I was a bit harsh yesterday. I'm sorry. It's really nothing. I'm sorry I ruined your chances with Jax. I shouldn't have opened my big mouth. It was my fault. If you like, I can talk to him for you. Why would I want you to do that? I'm over Jax. I think it's time to give other guys a chance. And then, Donna winked at me. I'll wait for you after school. I want to take you somewhere special. Every minute felt like an hour. So when the bell finally rang, I ran right out into the street. And when I saw Donna waiting by her car, I wasted no time in hopping into the passenger seat. She was smiling the whole drive, but she never said anything. I kept trying to start up a conversation, but she just kept smiling. It got a bit creepy. And then, I realized we were in a part of town I'd never seen before. She parked the car and made me put a blindfold on. I was excited. Of course I was. My crush for many years was leading me to what I was hoping would be our first date. So whatever creepy feelings I was having, I pushed them aside. Until she pushed me, and I fell over something. I heard a metal gate slam shut, and that was when I began to panic. You ruined my life. Now Jax doesn't want me. Do you have any idea how long I've waited for him to ask me out? And now, because of you, he doesn't want me. But now you're taken care of. Nobody can come between Jax and me. Goodbye, Callum. I took off my blindfold, and the darkness around me disoriented me for a bit. I yelled and screamed, but the only answer I got in the abandoned factory I was in were the echoes of my own voice. Until I heard a shuffling noise. When I turned around, I realized it was just a bunch of rats. But then, in the corner of the room, I saw a pile of clothes where the rats had been digging. I ran to it and quickly realized that the pile of clothes was a girl. A very pretty, very unconscious girl. I tried to wake her up, but she wouldn't stir. She was so thin. Her eyes were sunken, and she looked like she hadn't eaten in ages. I knew I had to get out of there. As I was searching for a way out, something in my head clicked. Almost 3 months ago, a girl from our school disappeared. Rumors were that Jackson and her had been seeing each other. I ran to the girl again, and when I looked at her face, I knew. It was her. It was Amanda, the missing girl from 3C. I tried my phone, but there was no signal. I tried to get into the vents, but the screws were rusted over. It was impossible to budge them. I broke a few windows, but there was nowhere to escape to. All the windows were several floors up. Until, behind a bunch of old metal shelves, I saw it. A door. As if I'd suddenly gained superhuman strength, I flung the shelves off of the wall, and after 15 minutes of ramming myself into it, it finally burst open. I carried Amanda out of there and screamed for help. Luckily, some people were passing by, and they helped me. We went straight to the hospital. They said it was good that we got there when we did. Otherwise, Amanda would have been a goner. I told the police everything that happened, and when Amanda woke up, she told them what Donna had done to her. Donna was insanely jealous that Amanda was dating Jax, and so one day, she befriended Amanda. And out of nowhere, Donna told her that she needed her help with picking out an outfit. Donna knocked her unconscious the moment Amanda got in her car, and when she woke up, she was tied to a chair in the middle of the abandoned factory. Amanda only survived on expired canned food she found, and the drops of rainwater that fell through the cracks in her roof. It was only a matter of time before they found